Alright guys, welcome to Hollywood Mechanic. My name is Micah and today we're going to be talking about how daily driven exotics is ruining supercars. So, daily driven exotics ruining supercars. And I know what you're gonna say, Micah, I just saw you on DDE's channel putting a supercharger on a Gallardo Squadra Corsa. And yeah, you did. And I got no problem with those guys. Damien was super chill. All the guys there, I didn't get to talk to anyone other than Damien, but they all seemed chill. So my problem is not with them directly. My problem is with supercars being driven daily, or exotics being driven every day to the grocery store, to whatever. It's a problem. All right, let me explain. When I was a kid, I remember exotics just like being out of touch, you know, or out of reach. Something that was like, it inspired so much excitement, and it was just a real statement of power and beauty at the same time. I mean, when I was a kid, it was in the 90s, so really the only way to get a glimpse of these cars and to get educated on all the exotics of the 90s was magazines. There was no real TV show. Internet was basically non-existent. So I remember like picking up magazines and just trying to imagine what these just beautiful monsters sounded like. Quite unsuccessfully, I might add. There was no way to tell what an exotic car sounded like. My dream car was the Lamborghini Diablo, a V12 monster from the 90s. I mean, just an extremely rare, beautiful car, and I'll never forget the first time I saw one. I was 12 years old, and it was in Brno in the Czech Republic, and it was behind some glass at a dealership. All four tires there had been let out so that make it harder to steal. But I just remember like standing and peering through the glass and just being awed by how low it was, how wide it was, and just wishing that I could hear it run. The first time that I drove a Diablo, I mean, it was so surreal. I'll never forget that experience. I'll never forget hearing that engine rumble, feeling like the gated manual, like it was just a dream come true. And that's what supercars were. They were a rare, beautiful, powerful expression that was really reserved for special times. Lamborghini only produced 2,900 of the Lamborghini Diablo in different variants over the course of 11 years. Let's compare that to the Gallardo. 14,000 plus created, and it shows. What do you think when you see a Gallardo? It's like, or my dude, stop trying, it's only a Gallardo. That's literally what goes through my mind, and it's a shame because the Gallardo is actually an excellent car on the track. It's really balanced, got a great sound, and also with a gated manual, it's an amazing car. But we just see too many of them. The Gallardo is really a pretty car too. I mean, honestly, if you look at a lot of the models, the Superleggeras, the Squadra Corsas, or Super Trofeos, I mean, they're really cool cars. But they have been tarnished by how many have been produced. And Lamborghini's only getting worse. The Huracan already over 14,000, and that's not even including the R8s, which, I mean, it's the same car. I work on the inside of these things and they're identical, so there's even more. And then let's look at the Urus. In 1 year, they've already produced 5,000, all of them sold. So this is not even a supercar. This is not even a traditional Lamborghini. It's an Audi SUV wearing Lamborghini skin, and it really, what purpose does it have? And it can't even go off-road. The LM002 was, I mean, I think they produced less than 700 of those, and they were monsters and just a beast that you wouldn't drive to the grocery store. It just didn't make sense. But the Urus is basically an expensive grocery getter. All right, and these high production numbers, they're not being used at the track because we got a ton more of enthusiasts that are suddenly driving. They're not really going hard at the canyons. Honestly, if you get in a Lamborghini with the traditional driver and go to a canyon, it'll scare the crap out of you. Literally braking mid-corner, it's the scariest thing. There's a reason they get wrapped around telephone poles and slid off at dishes. But they're not going to track events, they're not going to some extravagant ball or some movie premiere that has a red carpet. No, instead they're being driven to artificially create that symbol of power and success and extravagance. It's basically an ego. There's even an ego mode in a lot of cars. And the people driving these cars to prop up this ego, they're the type of guys that are making them super loud, racing from stoplight to stoplight, whipping around in the center lane to pass people, just being egotistical people. And that puts a foul taste in the mouths of anyone that's not a supercar fan, even me. Even me as a supercar fan, when I see someone driving like that, it's just like, dude, chill out. Jules Verne had a quote, "You cannot oppose reasoning to pride, the principle of all vices, because of its very nature, the proud man will not listen to it." So basically what he's saying is, talking to a proud man about his pride is just going nowhere. So let's stop addressing them, because that's a whole nother issue. What is daily driven exotics doing for our planet? Supercars are gas hogs. I mean, you're looking at between 4 and 10 miles to a gallon. And if they're driven the way that they're driven, let's just say it's going to stay around that 4 mile per gallon mark. They take a ton of pollution to create. I mean, most of the panels and frame components in there are carbon fiber or aluminum, and aluminum takes a massive amount of electricity to create, as well as, let's say, the cats. The cats have to be huge, and they use a lot of rare earth materials to produce. Did you know there's been over 66,000 W12 motors produced, primarily by Bentley for the Continental GT? I mean, these things are gas-guzzling monsters, and they behave kind of like a monster, a little bit sluggish and slow. I mean, it really doesn't feel exciting. And they came out with the V8 version, which I think feels every bit as exciting. It only has a half a second deficit to 60, and I think it's like 70 horsepower difference in between the V8 and the V12, despite the fact that the V8's getting much more gas mileage, which means less fumes choking the planet. No one will buy the V8. I mean, the V8 numbers are so low that it's a joke, honestly. And I read an article over the weekend that was just this guy saying, oh, I wouldn't have the V8. I just couldn't be seen in one. And that's the problem. It's ego. Not only is it gas guzzling, but it takes hours and hours of labor to do even the most simple job. The starter on that car requires the entire engine and transmission to be removed, and even after you have it sitting on the ground, it's a good 4 to 8 hours just to get the starter out. And that means these things are not really going to be kept around very long. It's just not worth it. And we see them falling into more ego guys' hands. Guys that are just going to keep them up, just doing the bare minimum on the maintenance to keep them running while their numbers appreciate and fall off. I mean, supercars and exotics have their own inflated economy, and that economy is slowly deteriorating because these things are not collector cars anymore. I mean, this $250,000, $300,000 car in 10 years is worth $30,000, $40,000, and it's going to get worse because the cars have so much plastic and electronics in them. It's going to become ridiculously expensive to maintain something that really wasn't rare. And so what do you have now? You've got car collectors trying to figure out what the next classic's going to be so they can make the smartest buy, or buy the car that's depreciated to make the smartest flip in a few years. And what cars are the collector cars? Well, we got the Goldwing SLS AMG, which just, other than I think the first 4 years, it's never sold for its MSRP. It's always been above. The same thing with the Carrera GT, the Ford GT, the BMW Z8. These are really low production number cars that actually were priced a little bit higher maybe than they were actually would have been if they'd have been mass produced, but now they're what everybody wants. They have that same dream or awe-inspiring factor to them, this super rare car. I mean, believe me, nobody's ever going to care about a 458, a 488, a California, a Gallardo, a Rolls-Royce Ghost. They're just going to fall off. They're literally statements for right now. And the whole time that we're driving these things, we're destroying the planet. And my biggest fear is that there's eventually going to be an outcry. The masses, we already know, are not having the same car following that we had in earlier days. And so my fear is that everyone's going to get pissed. I mean, California is on fire, Oregon is on fire, the whole East Coast is under massive tropical storms, polar ice caps are melting. How long is it before the general public steps up and says, hey, enough of these things, let's cut them, we need to go to only electric cars? And they wouldn't be wrong. Why are we not making these supercars more electric? The Urus, for instance, is slower than an old SUV. The Tesla Model X decimates it to a quarter mile, to any speed you want. So why have we not made the new supercar a supercar? We're still in archaic times just because it sounds cool. And there's no reason we can't put a low displacement V8 or V6 in a car to drive chargers for electric motors and make it still exciting, but make it so that it does run more efficiently with electric motors. There's no reason. That's one of two things that I think need to happen. Like I say, go to electric, and then two, the other big thing is stop mass production of supercars. If we want a gas-powered motor for the way that it makes us feel and the excitement of the gas-powered motor, then it needs to be extremely limited. I mean, look at Pagani. Paganis are still extremely limited productions. Koenigsegg, very, very rare to see one. I've only ridden in one Koenigsegg in my life. And the Pagani C12S, I mean, that car, I'll never forget it, and I've never ridden in one. I've never even seen one driven. I've just seen them parked. So what the automotive manufacturers need to do is stop making their profits on a car that they can mass produce to get their profit margin up, but instead make 10 or 20 or 200 of a car and charge an exorbitant amount. I mean, if you want to say, hey, I have a giant ego and I have the money to have this extremely expensive rare car, what better way to do it than to say you pay $2-3 million for it?